Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. Today we're taking a little bit of a break from the LR4 truck and we're addressing something that you guys were correct on. I probably should have listened to all of you when we went through this the first time. It involves this 2 1/4 diesel that we can see is not currently in anything. Today we're gonna finally listen to you guys. As it turns out, everything is just a little bit better with boost. Once again, it is time to do a little rearranging. Seems to be something I'm getting pretty good at, even though I don't want to do it as much as I am. But we started peeling some of the parts off the 944 turbo, namely the turbo part of the turbo. But man, that looks pretty good yet. I built this probably 6, 7, 8 years ago at this point. Stuff like this is always the fun stuff to build. But just to give you guys a little perspective as to why we're going the part out route on the 944, like I mentioned last video, I did try and sell it whole, but it just didn't do it. This nose panel, even though it's in rough shape, is specific to the 944 turbo or the S2 with the nicer looking front end. That piece alone is like $300. That bumper bar, also $300. It's crazy what some of this stuff gets to price-wise once it gets a little age on it, but the sum of the parts is worth way more than the car as it was, apparently. I wish someone would have bought it. Someone will get to have a fun turbo setup on their 944 turbo instead. First part of the rearranging, getting the 944 back out of the shop. One of these days we'll have a little more room so we aren't jockeying stuff around all the time. And we needed to get that out of the way so we could bring the truck back in. I wanted to get the truck in before it starts to rain because, as it turns out, it's not quite waterproof yet. So we need to get that shoved into the front of the shop before we start rearranging this, get the lightweight pulled out, because I think we'll work on that in this little bit of open area that I have left. One of these days, guys, one of these days, I promise we'll have a little more room, so this isn't the norm. So in light of all the recent events, I think I'm gonna take your guys' advice and we'll start dealing with this today. Yes, that is our 200 TDI that we just went and picked up. And being we're pulling the lightweight out, I'm guessing you guys can guess. Guessing you guys can guess. I'm thinking you guys can guess what we're doing today. Probably get the engine hoist on the other side before I pit myself in a pickle. So yes, the 2 1/4 diesel that we just put in there is coming back out. I really did want to go out and enjoy this thing as it kind of originally was with the low horsepower diesel. But with everything going on, time has gotten away from me this year. So I really don't want to waste any more setting this particular one up only to switch it out in a couple months for the 200 TDI. That was the ultimate goal with this anyways, was to put the 200 TDI in it and get it on the 35s as we see. And the more and more I look at it, the less and less I want to take these guys off. So we're just going to go ahead and yank this one out. Although putting this in was not wasted time by any means. And we'll explain that here in just a second, but let's get this guy out of here. I mean, whose idea was it to put this in there anyways? The good news is we're going to be able to leave the transmission in because I think I want to use the series transmission yet. No reason for me at this particular point in time to switch that out. There's some options that are based around the series transmissions that I want to explore here in the future, so we may as well set it up with that. Need a pry bar. There we go. That was a lot easier coming out without the transmission attached. When we swung it in there, we had the transmission attached, and that takes some finagling to get the transfer case to swing in and clear everything going on. Now we just need to swap a couple things over to the 200 TDI, and you'll see how this all jives together. Or I guess we'll see how all this jives together, because I've never actually put a 200 TDI into a series truck before. So me and you are doing it for the first time together. Unless you've done it before, then this isn't your first time, I guess. And you'll get to laugh at me on everything that I don't know. It's usually a lot. So our dilemma with this particular TDI is it is a Defender one, which means the injection pump is hanging down low, closer to level with the crankshaft. What you actually need putting one of these into a series with less effort is a Discovery, or at least the timing cover and injection pump from a Discovery TDI. That places it up higher, because where it sits now, it would run into the engine mount bracket on the 2 1/4. But the good news is we just tacked this one that we built back on, because if you remember, this had a Buick V6 in it when I got it, so the factory mounts were gone. We replicated the factory mounts, but the factory mounts don't work with the Defender TDI. This side will. This side's gonna be in a different location, so we'll have to modify this one a little bit. I think if we cut it here, move it down, we should be able to make that all work. We have the capabilities. We'll transfer this left-hand bracket over to the TDI, get it bolted up to the transmission, and just kind of hang it in place and get that guy reworked to the correct position. A little bit of messing around, but I think to have the power of that turbo, it's definitely worth it. Well, that seems as solid as can be. We really like to test our Harbor Freight little dollies around here. Test them a little too hard sometimes. This little engine cart I made for that V10 TDI worked much better with the gantry crane than it does with a cherry picker. You can't get the legs underneath the cart, nor are the legs wide enough to split it. So you just kind of got to awkwardly lift it. And we just got to get it high enough to kind of maneuver it out from underneath. A little bit of this action. How'd that feel? You guys fell a little bit. Now, one of the things we have to swap over is the clutch disc. If you look at our input shaft there, it's got some finer splines and a higher count than the series transmission. I believe we can use the TDI pressure plate, so we're gonna try that. If we can't, let me know. Although by the time you type it out, I'll probably have already found out that it doesn't work. But if I'm wrong, call me an idiot anyways. So I think what I'm gonna do is pop the pressure plate off, use the series clutch disc, and see if that all works. My thoughts on that are maybe the TDI pressure plate has a little higher clamping force to hold the extra power. Then again, maybe it doesn't. Then we're gonna swap our engine bracket and hope that the rest of this somewhat slides into there without too much messing around. But this whole deal could obviously end up being an epic failure. So now I don't have the correct clutch alignment tool laying around for a series transmission. So we'll use a little trick that Ted taught me years ago. So I got a socket that fits into the pilot bushing, nice and tight there. And then we took some painter's tape, just some old school masking tape, and did a couple wraps to size that correctly with the spline side. And that's gonna make up our improvised alignment tool. That's gonna work flawlessly. What could possibly go wrong? Stuff like this is my favorite kind of hacks in life. So in theory, this left-hand side should just bolt up and we'll be able to use that bracket just how it is. Not so much on that side. We should probably just get that zipped off now because we're just about ready to swing this into place. I'll torque the pressure plate here. Well, that one lasted a long time on there. Now I'm hoping what we can do here is just slice this one down to shorten it up. Being the TDI bracket comes out much further. And outside of that, it looks like it may work, but then again, also it might be too long. We might have to modify this bracket and do a combination of slicing this one down and that one down. But I guess there's really only one way to figure out exactly what we need to do to get this thing fitted up. And that's to get it in there. I might just have to rip the bumper off. Plenty of room now, way more than before. That bumper needed to go anyways. All right, it is in there now. We have it sitting on this left side mount, which we knew was just gonna work because that is the same location as the 2 1/4 that we pulled out. So no big deal on that one. Transmission is bolted back up and everything should stay relatively the same there. That was the expectations. It all went together fairly decent. It was just a little bit of jockeying, always is when you're mating a input shaft into a clutch, but it all worked out. What didn't work out is this right side, or the driver's side, because this one's right-hand drive. My intentions were to cut this down and just shrink up the distance towards the frame. But if you take a look at the bracket right there, it is pretty close to the frame rail. And we'd have to cut it somewhere right around here, which poses a problem because this bolt would disappear. It's kind of how the engine's held into place, so that wouldn't work. So I'm thinking we're gonna have to rip that engine bracket off and chop that down, shorten it, move it closer to the block. Although now looking at it, the other option might be, I wonder if we get rid of this little wedge adapter that switches it to 2-bolt and run it just like the left-hand side where it is stud on the top, stud on the bottom, just a center stud. That might work better. We wouldn't have to worry about this bolt then. And if possible, I would only like to change one or the other. Even though it's completely custom, I'd like to have it as close to factory as possible. So if we could run a factory bracket and a modified frame side bracket, that'd be better than having custom on both sides. That way when we're switching stuff around, we don't have to just remake everything every single time. Let me unbolt this and see where we end up. It's gonna be kind of hard to see, and obviously this mount is chooched, as they say, but I think that's gonna be the ticket. And essentially we're gonna cut it something in that vicinity, I think. Right around this die mark, and I think I'm happy with that. That actually works out pretty good. We may just remake this all together, but I'm gonna cut this one up first just to make a template. All right, so we're gonna cut here first. That might be a little long, but we'll give it a shot. We'll try that first. It's easier to cut off more. Then here is our angle that we need it to be at. So we'll line that up. On both sides. So I think that is going to be the ticket. It should sit in there just like so. We have clearance on the bottom, clearance on the top. So we just need to pry the engine over. So I'll slip it in and make sure. And we can let it back down. I have the jack underneath it to hold it level without weight on it. So that is where it needs to end up. And I'm actually really happy with how that ends up sitting. I think that's gonna be the ticket. I'm gonna tack that into place. Hey, look, I think we're good on radiator clearance. Looking good on the transmission back there. And the other thing I was curious about was downpipe clearance. So the Defender has a high mount turbo, which actually works out nicely. We should have plenty of room to swing back. And the cross member there has been modified at one point in time. That was clearance previously, probably to fit the Rover V8 that was in here. That'll allow us to get a nice 2.5-inch downpipe underneath there, tucked up and out of the way. Keep it protected by the frame. Yes, good deal. We'll let the jack off here. It's now sitting on its own. Get the hoist out of here. Now that looks pretty proper in there. Happy to see a turbo in the lightweight. I have the engine running slightly downhill at the moment. When I put this all together, I factored in about a 1/4 inch of sag in the mounts, because as you saw, that one mount was pretty frickin' squished up. So we'll get some freshies in there when we put this in for the final time and lift it back up proper, but everything else is looking good. We actually clear over here on the timing cover with plenty of room. I was kind of worried about the shock bolt, but I can get my fingers in between it. We'll set the radiator in place, kind of measure out and figure out what we want to do for an intercooler on there, and we can start fabbing that stuff up. But I think we're also going to blow this thing apart pretty shortly and at least get the chassis painted and weld in those mounts. But yeah, you guys were right. I should have just did this to begin with. And in that configuration, I think the lightweight is gonna be a blast, especially if we get some nice built up axles underneath there. I'm excited. I've loved every Defender that we've had with the 200 TDI, so I think we'll love this as well. So we're gonna sit down, do some measuring, order some piping, order an intercooler. We need to order exhaust stuff for the truck, so we may as well order exhaust stuff for this. And I think we can make both of these come together pretty quick here. We have a little wiring we can tie together. The TDIs are obviously pretty super simple. Not much to make these run, so we'll be able to make this all work pretty well. So pretty soon, LR4 truck driving, lightweight driving. Once that's in effect, it's gonna be pretty hard to decide which one to take in the morning. I'm excited. There's nothing cooler than a series truck, and I'm guessing there's not a whole lot better than a 200 TDI in a series truck. With that being said, I appreciate you guys. With that being said, appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing. And stay tuned. We'll have some more updates on what's going on here at the ranch on our midweek day in the life of a hoarder. I'll let you know if we got everything ordered for this.